Hey, what's up guys? Today we have a very special video as I got early access to Mavuika and want to give you guys a showcase of her, what she does, what to expect in various teams and content. I'll give you guys a rundown on what she does very briefly and mostly center this video around a showcase of Mavuika, showing you some gameplay and giving you my thoughts on her in a quick format before my guide that'll come out when she's officially released. Before we begin, I want you guys to know that I do stream most nights on Twitch, link in the description if you're interested, and also a reminder that everything you're seeing is from the creator experience server, which I'm honored to be a part of, although note that certain things may be subject to change. And with that being said, let's get right into it. All right, so what we're going to be doing today is a bit different than usual because I'm going to focus this video around Mavuika, her early access gameplay, what she can actually do, and then in the following videos, I will give you a more detailed analysis on her pull value as well as a complete guide. So firstly, before we get into showcasing Mavuika, let's talk about what she actually does. Firstly, Mavuika is a character who has a very unique way of being played. Through her elemental skill, she can ride a motorbike, spinning around with it, hitting everything that she comes into contact with. This ability will do decent damage and especially a lot more after using her burst, which will increase the damage of her attacks based on how many fighting spirit stacks you have. Yes, Mavuika is actually the first character who relies on so-called fighting spirit stacks instead of elemental energy to get her burst back. This means you don't need energy recharge, and will get your burst through these unique stacks. The way you get these is by consuming Night Soul points on various characters and by doing normal attacks on your on-field character. This means that Mavuika can build it up herself, but will get a ton of it from other Natlan characters who will consume Night Soul points. Outside of just a buff to her attacks, as well as another buff included in her kit, notably giving up to 40% damage bonus to your active party member. Very crucially, Mavuika's burst does pretty insane damage. The scaling on this thing is genuinely huge, allowing you to one-shot a lot of content if built properly. In fact, because the scaling is so high, you want to try to trigger reactions such as melt or vaporize, try to do as much as you can to get the most out of this big hit of damage, as we'll see in the showcase. In my opinion, it's very satisfying to use your burst, one-shot everything, and then afterwards, you can spin on your bike and do more damage for 7 seconds. Outside of just that, if you choose not to ride your bike, which you'll do after bursting or by holding your skill, you can also tap your skill and play Mavuika as a sub DPS or kind of off-field support instead, applying pyro and dealing damage. This is a different playstyle where Mavuika can fit in many teams, as we'll see throughout this video, and while she doesn't have the fastest power application from off-field, it is enough for most teams where you don't need the absolute highest amount of pyro. Mavuika will give you buffs on top of having access to a really strong set, either hero for support or obsidian for damage, and even in a team where she's a quote-unquote support, as you will see, she'll do so much damage that it's kind of hard to label her as that because this character's numbers are genuinely very impressive. Now again, I'll leave the nuanced analysis for my future video talking about her power meta-wise and my thoughts on all of that. As a baseline, it's important to understand that she is a character who deals big hits of front-loaded damage and can have very impressive numbers. If you can buff them and react with her burst, as you can see, she can one-shot a lot of content on top of being able to be played as an off-field sub DPS. With that in mind, because her burst does require fighting spirit points, it is crucial to run her alongside a Natlan support, someone who consumes Night Soul points. This could be a 5-star like Genshin or Citlali, who have incredible synergy with her, or even 4-stars such as Oron or Kachina, to varying degrees of efficiency. In fact, that's something we're gonna showcase in this video is Mavuika in different teams, including both her premium 5-star team options and also her 4-star teams. So let's get into that right away. All right, now that you have an understanding of what she does, let's get into a showcase of Mavuika in different teams. Firstly, I'm going to show her off in some premium teams alongside her best supports. My Mavuika will be on her signature weapon, C0 of course, on the Obsidian Codex set. For more information on how to build her, again, stay tuned for my guide coming out next, and the same can be said about Abyss footage, which I will be sure to include a full Abyss 12 clear and showcase in my complete Mavuika guide, so subscribe if you want to catch that as it comes out. But for now, here is her gameplay against bosses, domains, and different content, as it is still early access. Alright, so firstly, here is Mavuika in one of her premium and strongest teams. She's paired alongside both Genshin and Citlali, who are great supports for her. Genshin, of course, will give her buffs, res, shred, and healing, and Citlali will give her much more damage after she triggers a melt, on top of shield, and also having personal damage and buffs through her weapon and artifact set, on top of cryo application and a burst that does decent damage. Keep in mind that one of Mavuika's supports in almost any of her teams will be on the scroll set, with another one being on a different supportive artifact set. In this team, as you can see, Mavuika is dealing well over 1 million damage, again, at C0, but with her signature weapon and with premium supports at high investment, so keep that in mind. But the damage you're seeing is genuinely very impressive. Mavuika is a character who has really good personal damage, and it's very front-loaded. It's something that you want to try to react with, try to melt it or vaporize it, and as you can see, basically anything I'm fighting is getting one-shotted. These bosses stand no chance, and because we're clearing so fast, it's kind of hard to showcase her bike as well, because once I use my burst, things typically just don't exist anymore, so we don't even have time to spin around on the bike. As you can see here though, through a domain that has 2 waves, I can burst the first wave and then very quickly spin around on the bike and clear what's left by melting over 200k with the bike alone. Again, she's buffed for 7 seconds inside of this bike based on how many fighting spirit stacks she has, so you end up having a pretty good DPS window, albeit a tight one where you need to know what you're doing. To give you another longer fight with this premium team, here I fought a local legend that has more HP, so naturally you can see more gameplay, where not only did my burst do a ton of damage, but even spinning afterwards on my bike allowed me to clear her very fast with Mavuika, who is basically the definition of a hyper carry here, doing the vast majority of your team's damage, although Citlali does do some as well. Outside of just that though, even with just one of these 2 amazing supports, I believe the team is still quote unquote a premium team. Pairing one of them alongside Bennett, a great support for Mavuika, will give her so many stats and allow her to do so much damage. As you can see, with just Citlali, I'm still melting for a ton of damage, and even in another case with just Shilonin, if I'm running another crowd character like Rosaria, provided I can still get the melts off, which is very doable, she still does a ton of damage. Outside of just that, for some vaporized teams, I paired Mavuika with Farina, who will apply Hydro from off field on top of giving you buffs, and Mavuika here can still deal a really solid amount of damage that she will be vaporizing on top of also getting all the buffs that Farina gives her. So this was naturally another team that I really enjoyed, running someone like Bennett, Farina, and Shilonin alongside Mavuika. With this team, I decided to fight a local legend as well, just to see as much Mavuika footage as you can, put as much in this video as possible before she's out so you can see kind of what to expect from this very powerful hyper carry. Now I will say before moving forward that both Shilonin and Citlali, or at least one of the 2, is a considerable increase to your Mavuika's damage because they're just such strong characters on their own that also synergize very well with Mavuika, so I highly suggest using at least one with her if you have them or plan on getting one. Outside of just that though, there are definitely some viable 4-star supports that Mavuika can use as replacements. The main 4-star team I can recommend is using Auroron inside of a Chevreuse team. If you're playing a Mavuika overload team, you can definitely get a lot of value, especially if your 4-stars have constellations, but even just at a baseline. While you won't be melting or vaporizing Mavuika's damage, you'll still get a ton of buffs from Chevreuse, Bennett, and Auroron through the hero set, and maybe some constellations as well, and your Mavuika will be able to clear content very efficiently. You can still crit for a big number as you're seeing. It's very satisfying, even though it won't be as high, obviously, as if you're triggering a reaction such as melt or vaporize. The team itself is still quite good, and it makes for a very nice alternative. Keep in mind though that you want to be trying to consume Night Soul points as much as possible in a Mavuika team to stack up your fighting spirit and give your Mavuika as much damage as possible by stacking up her burst as much as you can. This is another reason why a good Natlan support who's consuming Night Soul points is so crucial in a Mavuika team. Outside of just that though, you can also run some more scuffed free-to-play teams that still will work. For example, running Kachina instead of Shilonin as a sort of 4-star alternative, who obviously won't give you as many buffs and not as fast Night Soul point consumption, but the team will still work and you'll still do a lot of personal damage on your Mavuika, although you won't get as many stacks as rapidly. As you can see though, in every clip I'm showing, your personal damage will still be very high. It just obviously will get better if you have better supports for Mavuika. She synergizes particularly well with Bennett in almost any team, and then also with Shilonin or Citlali or both with a flexible last slot. Outside of that, as you can see, there are more free-to-play friendly teams you can run, and also support teams where she performs very well. In fact, as far as support teams go, Mavuika is a character that is very easy to use as a sub DPS, off-field DPS, or support. It's kind of hard for me to call her a support because while she definitely has supportive capabilities, her personal damage in those teams is still really high. Like as you're seeing here in this Chaska team, because I managed to melt my burst, I just one-shotted the enemy before I even got to swap to Chaska. Again, this is a team that works very well, using Chaska as an example, where Chaska will benefit from having an off-field pyro support. We'll give her 1 or 2 pyro bullets if you factor in Bennett as well, while also having a cryo character here like Citlali to enable melts on both Mavuika and Chaska. Obviously, you don't have to run this exact team, but being able to run Mavuika as a support gives you a lot of different benefits. Firstly, she has good personal damage, and if you can react with it, if you can melt it or vaporize it, it'll be even higher. But even without it, her burst will still be good, on top of also having solid off-field passive skill damage and pyro application, being enough pyro application for most teams. For an in-depth analysis on this, again, wait for my guide after she's out on the live servers, but it's important to understand that while she doesn't have the absolute fastest pyro application in the game, it ends up being enough for a lot of different teams. She also can give you buffs through her kit and also the hero set if you choose to run it, or she can just run the Obsidian Codex set and focus on her personal damage. She can be ran alongside Natlan carries like Chaska, Moalani, or Kanich, although with Moalani, you want to make sure you're not running another Hydro character as you might not have enough pyro there, and with Kanich, she works well, although keep in mind that getting the hero set buff can be a bit annoying as when you reapply spray burning on an enemy, it doesn't technically count as triggering a reaction. The sky's really the limit. You can run her with other pyro characters. You could run her in a forward melt team with someone like Grizzly, a solid crowd carry as you're seeing, who can manage to melt a lot of his hits through Mavuika's off-field pyro. You can obviously run her with other cryos as well. I just chose to showcase Grizzly. You can obviously play her with Nevalette because he's Nevalette and trigger the occasional vaporize, notably on Mavuika, who will still do good damage from off-field, on top of also not needing energy recharge. This is a crucial thing I want to mention. Even as a support, she is very easy to play. You can fit her in almost any team, have good damage, and also not need ER to apply pyro, which can make her very easy to build. I even decided to play her with Navia just to see how it goes, and the team did still manage to do a lot of damage. Obviously, Navia can use basically any solid support in her teams without needing the most elemental application. Obviously, someone like Xiangling can apply a bit more pyro than she will, so there are some teams where that's nice, but in general, Mavuika being able to run without energy recharge, have solid buffs, be able to run the hero set, or just choose to maximize her damage, and her damage from off-field is really good, on top of having pyro application and being a solid support option that you can run, makes me like her and at least appreciate her flexibility. For my overall thoughts, I think she is honestly very impressive, especially as a main DPS who can have really high personal damage even at C0. She has good room for vertical investment, as we'll see in future videos, while especially synergizing well with premium Nat land supports like Shilonen or Citlali. Having at least one of them will level up her teams genuinely, so I highly recommend that synergy, whereas even just in general, you can play her as an off-field sub DPS or support, which I also value quite a bit. And so while this video was mostly centered around just an early access showcase, my initial impressions of her are quite positive, especially if you're someone who likes her design or playstyle. For a more detailed analysis of my thoughts on her in the meta, as well as a Abyss showcase in the floor 12, do stay tuned for a future review and especially my detailed guide coming out right after her release, where I have more time to play and test her. I unfortunately can't show you guys Abyss 12 footage right now, so again, stay tuned for that. And I hope I managed to give you guys a nice early look at what to expect from Mavuika, gameplay of her in various content, different teams, and just try to see her in action with my future videos specializing on a more detailed review and analysis of the character, as well as a complete build guide. I'm very grateful that I got to show you guys early Mavuika footage. Let me know what you guys think, and be sure to check out the newest Genshin Impact web event linked in the description down below for some in-game XP and artifact enhancement rewards. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know what you guys think of this new type of video. I hope it was appreciated, so thanks again for watching, and as always, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.